Hello, fellow writers. I'm Lewis. That over there is Tolkien, and you have found the Scripturient Society.
Welcome back, everybody, to your favorite writing podcast. What do I have underneath my eye? That over there is
Same
Carissa.
question I ask myself every day.
What's that on my face? That over there
Yeah.
is Carissa Harlow, aka Catherine, aka Lewis. I am your other beautiful host, Ash O'Rourke, aka Tolkien. And today, if you are watching this on YouTube, you may notice I have a different background. It's not even picking up my hand. I was trying to gesture to it with my hand that's missing one of my pretty nails. I have a green screen of a library. It's much nicer than my
That's
bedroom,
pretty
which I mean
cool.
is better than it used to be. I should have figured this out before, but I didn't. But I still think
It
that the
looks pretty
library is
cool.
fun. It is. I think it's cool.
Yeah.
Um, yeah. Anyway, so
It's very on
that's pretty
theme.
fun. I think so.
Yeah.
Ooh, it's like we like books or
Awesome.
something. I don't know.
Yeah, weird.
Um, Very strange. As I drink out of my kindly go away, I'm reading wine glass.
Perfect.
It is. Anyways, Lewis, how has your week been?
My week has been good. Just in case I act super weird for this episode, I'm just gonna come right out and say that I'm super anxious because I had to go into my email to get to the Zoom and I saw that I have a response from the agent who I sent my full to, and I cannot look at it because it would either destroy
Carissa.
me or build me up so high I would no longer be able to do this. So,
I understand. I
um,
understand. But I do want to know the second you open it.
yes, I don't know if it'll be tonight because I didn't even I saw her name and I was like eyes down, look for Ash's
Oh my
email because I
gosh.
cannot look. It's so that's going on in my head.
Wow. I'm getting
I
anxiety for
always
you.
I know I look at stuff right before we start recording and it's so
Not a good
stupid.
idea.
I'll be like, you know what I'll do? I'll check TikTok and then someone says something passive aggressive and I'm like, okay, now I'm in a mood. Or I check my email for the first time in a couple days and I'm like, oh my gosh, how long has that been in there?
Yep.
Um, so I don't know why I do that to myself, but if I seem kind of weird and shaky, that would be why. Because I just looked
Wow.
and I saw it, and now I'm super nervous, and my gut is telling me it's a rejection, which is good because I'll either be right or it's not a
Or
rejection.
surprised and
So
yeah, happy. Yeah.
yeah, I would rather not have the small victory of being right on this count, but that's what it would be to a degree.
Now,
So
was this a request for a full or a partial?
a full,
A full. It's
yeah.
even more
So
exciting.
I
Just
know.
remember, regardless, it says a lot that you got a request for a full.
I'm hoping
So
so. I hope
it
so.
does.
I got a rejection on the same query a couple days ago, and I was just like, I'm cool with it because I have a
Yeah,
full out there. So it changes your mindset a little
it
bit.
does.
But
Yeah, I get that because I got a
yeah.
request for a partial and it
Mm-hmm.
makes you feel a lot better about yourself. I'm like, you know what? I'll
Yeah.
just send out 10 more queries while we're at it because I'm feeling good
Mm-hmm.
about myself.
Yeah. Well, I'm on this high. Let me take
Yeah,
advantage.
exactly. Exactly.
Yeah, so otherwise my week has been good and less anxiety ridden. Um,
Decent.
I I went through my draft of, well, I guess I could include this in writing, but I'm going to say it now. I went through the draft of the project I did for Nano and
Mhm.
edited that a little bit. And now I'm kind of working through like some other writing ideas and what I want to do. I'll talk about that later. But that has basically been my
Ooh.
week. I've been watching some like cold case and unsolved mystery things on Netflix, which is kind of getting me
Ooh.
into a good writing mood.
Been me with
Um,
podcasts lately. I've been listening to lots of
yeah.
like unsolved mystery type podcasts.
Mm-hmm. They're fun.
Hmm.
Um, and I guess that's really it that's like exciting or good. But it's been a good
Nice.
like I haven't been in a reading mood still. I don't know what's going on with
Oh,
that, but I'm in kind of this in-between area where I'm like I could either read 50 books in a row or I could write another one, and I'm just not sure which one I want to do. So we'll see.
oh, that's funny.
But yeah, so it's, not much, but that's what it's been
But
like.
exciting. What there is
Yeah,
exciting.
exactly. I
That's
don't want
fun.
to like prop myself up too much, but it's been pretty great for me. Um,
Yeah.
I love it, but I don't know. It's always weird when people say like, "Have you been doing?" And I'm like, "Great, I read 10 books." And to them, that's like, "Oh, what a fun hobby." And I'm like, "You don't understand. My life has changed." So,
That's
it's
funny.
phenomenal. Or like I wrote a chapter in a book and people are like, "Oh, I guess that's fine." And I'm like, "You don't understand at all what's going on." So, it's been good. Um, So yeah, I'm gonna stop talking now because I'm in a babbly mood when I get anxious. So Ash, how has your
Oh,
week been?
it's been good. I would first of all like to point out once again, this is not relevant to you unless you're watching this on YouTube, but I have this kind of like sickly glow going on. I don't know
A
why.
sickly glow. Interesting.
I well, because I am like luminescent because I have my
Mhm.
little ring light thing on my camera,
Oh.
but also
Hmm.
I'm wearing green and something about like the pallor, like the way that the light
Hmm.
casts me into this strange pallor is kind of like a greenish pallor. So I have
Yeah.
this like I am glowing, but I am also kind of green. Like either I'm really ill or I'm underwater. I'm gonna go with
Ah,
underwater. But anyway,
I
so
like the
if you guys are
underwater.
trying to picture me, because I know that's what you spend, you just show up here to be like, oh, I can't wait to try and like picture Ash this week while she's talking. There
Exactly.
you
Give you
go.
a mental
There's a
image,
mental
the
image.
full
She looks
experience.
sick. She looks ill. Um,
But glowing.
but glowing. Yeah. So that's what's happening today. I obviously am really excited. I figured out how to do the green screen thing. But
Hmm.
in other news, this week I built a new roost for my chickens because we're gonna get like 20 chickens in the spring.
Hmm.
So just a couple more months, but I want to get everything prepped now so I don't feel like I have to like rush last minute. And I wanted a
Right.
better brooder because our brooder that we used last year is just not really usable this year. And also it makes it such a pain in the ass to get chicks. And I was thinking we would just get a bunch of full grown chickens, but it's a lot harder to quarantine them from the other chickens because you have to when you get them full grown. And so when you have to when they're little too, but it's a lot easier to contain 20 baby chickens as opposed to 20
Hmm.
giant grown chickens. So I
Yeah.
built a new brooder. It's not completely done. It's almost done. It still needs two sides and a top, but I made it like a double level. So like the bottom level is 3 nesting boxes. And I'm very
Cool.
proud of myself because I like didn't like I looked at some pictures of what other people did and I was like, I bet I can do this. And I'm just been
Nice.
going for it and knock on wood so far it's been going well. So I've been in a buildy mood, which always happens when I'm starting to get a little bit more free time. Like we're finally slowing down after the holidays, finally.
Hmm.
And I could use that free time to write. And instead, I'm using it to do projects around the farm. But the idea is surely at some point, if I get all the projects that have to be finished, I'll write, which is a horrible approach. There is always more projects to do. But
Yeah.
I also am not in like a buildy mood that often. And I kind of need
Hmm.
to know what we already have the materials for. So I know what we need to save money to buy other materials for. Because I'm just
Hmm.
using what we have. So I mean, that's pretty much been it. Like I
I
mentioned
mean,
last.
I love that you're the type of person that sees something online and you're like, I bet I could do that. Because I see stuff online and I'm like, what a great thing for someone else. I will neither buy it nor try it myself, but I appreciate it from afar. So,
That is so funny. I saw something I've been inspired to because I saw this thing. It was this video my mom sent me actually that was this girl who was asking her mom, how do you know how to do all these things? Like she was like building fences and stuff and just all kinds of like manual labor type building projects that do seem
mhm.
really daunting. I haven't done because they seem really daunting. And her
Yeah,
mom told her that at its core, everything is figure outable. And I thought that was inspiring.
I
And
like
so
that.
I've been
It's
like, I
true.
can figure outable this.
Oh,
Not that I
great.
mean, I've built stuff for many years for most of my life. So it's not like
Yeah.
I'm completely new to it, but I'm my two for the new year, the two things I'm embracing are everything is figure outable, but also on the same vein, find the time to do it right once or you'll find the time to do it twice. And I
Mhm.
hate redoing stuff, but around the farm, especially because I'm busy and or too cheap to spend money to do it the right way, I'm
Yeah.
redoing stuff that I did last year, which is why I'm now building roosts and nesting boxes. I did that last year. I just did a really bad job of it. And so I'm
Mhm.
trying to like do it now so I don't have to redo it again.
That's
Um,
fair.
so
I
those are
feel
my
like the
two
mantra
mantras.
is everything is figure outable or it's breakable. And the problem is that I will just gear toward the second if I let myself do what I want because I think like I can absolutely do this. And then I
Mhm.
try and I'm like, wow, I just broke this thing. And now I do
But then
have to
you
either buy a new one or
or figure
whatever.
out
But
something else.
I
Everything
guess.
is figure outable. That's the idea. Even if you break it, everything's figure outable.
I
And I
mean,
did
I
break several
guess.
pieces of the wood I was using because
Yeah.
I'm using materials I have here to save money,
Hmm.
but I figured out a couple ways to like fix the broken pieces where I think it still looks decent. So
Yeah. I mean, as long as
anyways,
it's functional, that's really what matters.
yeah.
So,
Honestly, I'm going for functional, won't break easily again, and I could maybe do something to make it look better. Like I could paint them all I'm thinking I'm just gonna spray paint everything inside of the chicken coop this like kind of eggshell white color, so it looks like a chicken palace. That's the idea.
A chicken palace. I love that.
Exactly, like a Grecian chicken castle thing.
Yes,
So
they
it's
deserve
just
luxury.
a temple, perhaps, actually. A Grecian chicken temple is the idea. Because then I don't have to go redo stuff. And it's not super, super ugly, which is everything else that I did last year was just really ugly also. So
Nice.
anyways, that's pretty much been my week. And as I mentioned, I did get a request for a partial, which is exciting. I love it. I also am like, oh, because you never know, like when it's the agent that you're like, well, I'm glad an agent responded, but it's not like the agent I really wanted. Of course, which is a very spoiled thing to say. If you guys, it's exciting to get partials and fulls, but regardless of who it's from. But you're always like, you have the handful in mind that for some whatever reason you think like these are the best. These are the cream of the crop literary agents.
These are the ones that are really going to get what I'm going for here.
Yeah,
and
exactly.
Know what to do with it. Yeah,
exactly. So that's been exciting. But
right.
I think that's pretty much been it. I've just been doing projects or planning projects. I'm going to my last building project for this week and then try to hold me to this. I'm not going to keep building crap. Because I'll just keep doing it. Cause like I said, they'll just continue, but Caleb, I think said he's going to take care of the other stuff. So,
oh my gosh,
what?
Keep going. I just remembered something else we both did this week.
Oh, heck yeah. I did the roost this week. The brooder box is almost done. I'll probably take off the old nesting box in there that is falling down. 3 of them are fine. 1 of them is falling off the wall because I did a horrible job. I might screw a couple other nesting boxes on the wall. And then, because that'll only take me like maybe 5 minutes. Right. I don't know what Ruby's doing, but if you guys hear weird noise, it's Ruby. And then the only other thing is I want to make a cat box that goes outside my mom's window so she can open her window and Lily can go out and hang out in the box outside her window. Like they used to do with baby cages outside of apartments.
Baby cages.
Yeah. It was a thing that they did because people
were
were
actually
like
called
wild.
Cages?
I don't know what they were called. I would call it a baby cage because
crazy.
If the pictures, it's a baby cage. These things that you make for cats look nicer and safer. So I'm gonna make
about right.
Yep. So I'm gonna make one of those for the kitty cats. Mostly just for Lily so she's happy again. But yeah. So anyways,
so that she's no longer depressed in her cat
she's
world.
no longer depressed. Exactly. She's been a lot happier lately anyways, but I want to do it, so I'm going to. So that, and I'm almost done, like I said, with the brooder box, and then just honestly replacing the old nesting boxes because I have like this big, it's just a big square of boxes I just have to like lift up and screw on the wall. So after that, I'm going to try and stop myself from just impulse projecting around the farm and actually try to write, which is what I always say, but I really, really want to. And then
I'll try to hold you to it.
Thank you. I appreciate that. And these are the ones, now that I've done it, am doing it right, I should not have to keep redoing this crap. So and then hopefully my brother will get started on the other projects that need to be done around here. And if we do those right the first time, I never have to do those again. So God, that's my goal for this year. I just don't want to have to keep redoing stuff. So
that's a good goal.
I know. Anyways, it does not apply to writing. You guys don't edit while you write then edit. It's a different, it really is a different approach. Do that with outlining though. Outlining, you do need to include all your core components or it's a lot harder to work backwards. So, to just get us back on topic.
I know, right? But also we both started playing D&D this week.
Yes, we did.
I totally forgot about it. And I'm very excited because I got to destroy a swarm of centipedes with fire.
You did excellent.
And I basically, with Maddie, single-handedly killed a giant spider. So that's pretty cool.
You guys were the only ones who hit.
Everyone else kept trying, and I'm like, I'm just going to do some acrobatic moves and get it from behind and underneath. And you know what? It worked. And
you know why you're so successful is because you come up with moves and stuff that are not even specifically in your tool belt, but you can do that. I'll just be like, roll for dexterity or strength or whatever.
Exactly.
And that's perfect. And you just roll really well. And I'm like, wow, okay. I would say that takes this much, or like roll for this with damage or whatever. And you're just really successful. So
because I'm a gnome. And so I have really high like acrobatics and anything in dexterity and stuff. So I'm like, how can I turn this fight move into an act of dexterity? Because that's where all my points are. So
yeah, that's smart. That's exactly how that's how when you hit so successfully. That is so funny.
I was excited about it. I went downstairs and I was like, guess what I just did?
You're like, I
As
beat
though it
a
was me.
giant spider.
Yeah, it was very, I
And
mean,
I
and
killed
because
a
like,
swarm of centipedes. They were really
yeah,
losing to the swarm of centipedes, which,
I
by the way,
know.
is not a very hard opponent. This was
I
all
know.
like level 1 type opponent stuff.
Because this is what happened in the very first like encounter of the game. It was 3 giant rats, and I was the only one that got injured. So I was like, you know what? I need to actually be helpful to this group. So I was like, I'll use my brain instead of any like fighting skills.
Uh-huh.
And then it worked, and I defeated the centipedes. So
You did great. And you did it in ways I didn't predict. I'm the DM. If you guys are new here, I've been
yeah,
DMing this group, which is my first time doing it. So I
yeah,
was pleased with how it went. I thought Emerald Tavern was very, very fun, and you'll have to come next time. But we couldn't hear her. And so I was like, you know what? In
yeah.
this episode, her character is under a curse and cannot be heard. And so she has to have a translator. But
Yep.
this next time that we're playing, we're going to play at Maddie and Dom's apartment. So we'll be able to
Okay.
hear you. So that'll be
Cool.
better. But next time we
Yeah.
go to Emerald Tavern, we'll get like a little Bluetooth speaker or something because
Yeah,
it was
it
super
looked really
fun.
cool. Yeah.
It was super cool. And their drinks are really, really good. So that was
Cool.
fun.
But anyway, that was both of our weeks, and I
That
had
was
totally
also-
forgotten it. I was like, we absolutely did something else this week. What was
We
it?
did, yeah. And we're doing it again on Sunday, and I'm so
Yeah.
excited. I'm like,
Me
we're
too.
cutting down the days till D&D.
I don't know if anyone that plays the game listens to this podcast, but I bet they don't. But this is where my mind went, because you know, it's D&D. It's a role-playing game. You're allowed to be someone you're not in real life. And part of me just wants to like double cross and betray the other people for like no reason.
You're one of those. You're the worst. You
I'm
said
like waiting for the opportunity,
you're
but
lawful neutral. Is that what
I'm
you
true
said?
neutral.
Oh, true
And
neutral.
I didn't know what to pick, so I picked true neutral in the sense of I just do whatever I feel like at any given
Yeah.
moment, so I'm neither good nor bad.
Okay. Yeah, that makes sense.
But
Yeah.
that's kind of what I meant and was going for.
I suppose
So,
you could double cross somebody, I suppose,
I
with
know.
that.
I don't know what I get out of it at all,
I
but
don't know either.
I kind of want to. So we'll
Maybe
see.
I will need to craft some kind of conflict that puts you guys at odds, that put y'all's interests at odds with each other.
Yep.
I'm
ready for the
more-
betrayal.
I need more Jinxie Twitch Peppermint background.
Yes, that's my character name. I am
Yes.
a rogue gnome, and
Mhm.
most of my background is secret, primarily because I don't know anything about gnomes. So I didn't really know how to do that. I figure as we go along, I will come up with stuff.
I'm really pleased because you guys picked the next quest, the next part of the quest you guys picked in the order that I wrote it, which makes it a lot easier for me. And also there's more like cool backstory stuff, I think, in this part, because that was the order that I wrote the side quests.
Yeah.
It's not a side quest. This is like the next phase of the quest, basically. So it's the next quest in the campaign. So I'm psyched.
excited.
And there's some side quests and stuff. And
Yeah.
it'll be good. I think you said you're from Respeño. Is that where you're from?
Did I say that?
Is that what you said? I thought it was.
I
That's
think
where a lot
did.
of gnomes are from. So I know Maddie's
that
character is.
Yeah.
I
thought she was an elf.
She is an elf. She just chose to be from Espana.
Oh, got it.
Yeah. I mean, the world is populated by random everybody. There's just a really like dense concentration of gnomes in Respeño.
Cool.
The world is from a book I created, you guys. Don't take that name, by the way. That's one of my countries. And I'm very pleased with how the world building is turning out. And of course, so much of this is so not applicable to my world because I don't have like multiple like magical races or whatever in my book.
Right. Like elves or anything.
Yeah. But I am, because there are like monsters and stuff. So the world building and the history of the world is from my book. And a lot of the monsters I am adjusting. So I'm taking like the comparison, so I'm using all the stats from the D&D monster manual, but I am applying them to what I would think a comparable monster in my world would be. So I'm having a really good time with that.
Yeah, it was really fun. If you guys have never played D&D, I would recommend finding people to try it with because it's very fun. I enjoy it a lot.
There's some online groups too, and there's chances are if you're in like a decent sized city, there's probably something like Emerald Tavern, which is a gaming tavern. A lot of themselves call themselves taverns, but it's basically like, this one's really cool because it's also a cafe. But a lot of them are just like clubs where you can go like buy like dice and board games, and they have tables and you can join the tables and play sometimes if you don't have a group. So go check it out. It's definitely worth it. I feel like as a writer, it's very worth playing, which we talked about some in our last episode when we interviewed Susanna Eileen Lewis, another podcaster and author. So if you guys want to hear more about the benefits of playing D&D or playing with other media to your writing, that would be the episode to go listen to. Yeah. But I guess we could get into book recs. Do you have any book recs? But you said you haven't been reading, so.
I haven't finished anything. I am reading Where Dreams Descend by Janelle Angelis, I think,
Hmm.
and it is fantastic. Like, it is a testament to how much of a reading slump I am in that I have not finished it yet, not like the other way around.
Uh-huh.
It's very beautifully written, and I really liked the opening, like the beginning, because it makes you feel like it's going in a certain direction, and then it completely turns the tables on you. And I really like
Ooh.
that in beginnings. I feel like, I don't know, especially with debut books, I feel like authors tend to go really straightforward in terms of what you're expecting, because they have to query and then they have to sell themselves. And so they're trying to make it as clear as possible what the book's going to be about. But I kind
Yeah.
of liked the little twist in there of like, oh, okay, we're going somewhere I didn't expect us to go.
Oh, fun.
So you think it's going to be set in this one place and then it changes. So it was very cool and I liked it a lot. So I mean, I'm only like halfway through the book, but I do really like it. So
Ooh.
I hope
I
to
also
finish it
like that.
soon.
That's very
Yeah.
cool.
And
Um,
it's a duology and I have the sequel, so I hope to finish them successively. But anyway,
that's always the dream.
yeah, I would
Um,
recommend that if anyone is interested. It's a fantasy, it's a YA fantasy. So,
God, I love a YA fantasy. Can y'all tell that
mhm.
that's probably, I mean, that's my favorite genre. I think it's
Can you
yours as
tell?
well. Yeah,
Yes.
can you
Not even
tell?
close.
I know. I was like, pretty sure it's YA fantasy.
Yeah.
Um, my book rec is actually also a YA fantasy, or
Yay.
Spoons would say it's not a fantasy technically, I guess, because there's no magic.
Okay, what is
Um,
it?
A
I heard of
Thousand
it.
Heartbeats by Kira Cass. So Kira
Oh, the
Cass
new
just,
one.
yes, the new one. Kira
Yeah.
has just
Okay.
released a new book. Her last one she was under contract for. So I don't think it'll be the last book that she publishes, but it is the last one that was officially in planning. So she
Hmm.
currently doesn't have any other works that are officially planned to publish. And
Right.
I will say this. I enjoy all of Kira Cass's works. Some of them I consider more like fluff reads, not because they're not well written at all, but because they tend to be like lighter content, which is what she does on. It's an intentional choice she talks about a lot as an author, actually,
Hmm.
because a lot of YA stuff these days is really more NA. And so she kind of likes to bridge that gap. And so they're like really sweet romances, basically. That also means like the themes are often, they're really good and interesting and totally relevant, but they're not as dark, or the
Hmm.
approach to the themes rather isn't as dark.
Hmm.
This book, I was expecting that to be the same tone,
Yeah.
completely different tone. I'm
Ooh.
in love with this book. You would love this book. This book is
Okay.
amazing. I read it and I immediately wanted to reread it. It's A Thousand Heartbeats by Kira Cass. Oh my
Okay.
God. I don't know how you're going to feel about the love interest. I don't want to give you any kind of spoilers. He doesn't seem
Okay.
like your typical kind, but you know what? He's not Kendall's either. And Kendall was like all on board. And
Well, Kendall and I are always on the same page,
you guys
so
are
this is a
usually
good
on the
sign.
same page. Yeah, exactly. So just amazing though. Fantastic. And I already
Okay.
liked Kira Cass, but now I'm like, oh my God, Kira, I need more of this tone, which
Yes.
I do like that she writes the like more like sweeter YA romances too. I think that we need
Hmm.
them. So I'm glad that she does that. And I think we'll probably continue to do that some. And this was not like really, wasn't like it was like Falling Kingdoms dark,
Yeah,
but
just darker than you were
just
expecting.
darker. But
Hmm.
really, well, yeah, some of it was really, really dark. I'm just thinking back.
I love that. So
I know you'll like it a lot. I thought it was wonderful. I know that you're going to have strong feelings about it, good or
one way or
bad,
the
like the
other.
characters. So I want
Okay.
you to read it so that I can know what you think about it. Um,
Yeah.
but yeah,
All right.
so
Exciting.
that's my book rec. It was wonderful. I
Cool. I
loved it.
kind of like it when authors kind of branch into like different fields and like lighthearted versus darker, because you like the
Hmm.
author, and so it's interesting to see how they handle something that's lighter or darker than you expect from them. So I like
Yeah,
that.
I agree. I totally agree.
Mhm.
Um, yeah, so that's my book rec. What about our word of the
Cool.
week?
All right, word of the week is Eigengrau. 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 And it is the dark gray color seen by the eyes in perfect darkness. So there's a
What?
word for
There's
that.
a
Yeah.
word?
Yeah. So I think you
I
can
can
use it as
growl.
like a color if you're trying to describe something really dark gray, but it also can be used in some kind of like atmospheric, indication that it is super perfectly dark.
I'm
So,
closing my eyes to see Eigengrau.
mm-hmm.
Wow, Eigengrau is so Eigengrau-y.
There you go.
I
Now it's
think,
an
what do you
adjective.
call, when you close your eyes and you see like kind of like the lights and stuff? What do you call that?
Yeah, there is a word for that. Is that phosphenes? Did we already do that?
Oh, we might
Word of the
have, or I
week?
mean, or talked about it at
Yeah, I
least.
think it's phosphenes.
Huh.
Way to test me.
Phosphenes.
But yeah,
She closed her
Eigengrau and
eyes
phosphines.
and the phosphenes danced on a background of Eigengrau.
Yeah, that was actually
Woohoo!
really good.
Thank
I love
you.
it. So yeah, I feel like for atmospheric writers, this could be a really
Mhm.
good word to use.
Which I'm thinking I'm more of an atmospheric writer than I thought I was.
Mm.
At least according to my latest book that I rewrote.
Yeah, I think the longer you do it, the more you write, the more you kind of turn into an atmospheric writer, maybe,
Yeah,
because
I
I think
think
it just
so.
becomes you know your style so well that you just kind of lean into whatever it is and it makes it feel atmospheric. That's what I
Yeah, I
would
think
say.
so. I think you're
But
right. I wish you guys could see Ruby just took her toy and jumped up on the bed behind me. Hopefully she'll like lay down and be good for a little while, but it's
cute.
doubtful. Should we get into the theme for this episode?
Yes, I'm so excited about this one because this is one of my favorite things to talk about. So, we're going to talk about the difference between a topic and a theme in your writing. And just to preface, are you good? Is Ruby doing something she's not
Sorry,
supposed
I was
to?
just watching her run out of the room.
Okay.
Yeah, she's fine.
So anyway, if you are this is one of the questions that like I can't tell how common knowledge it is, the answer to it. Because in English lit school, in your English degree program, they are
English
basically
lit
going,
school.
yeah, they're basically going to pound two things into your head. One is that the English language was created in 1066. The number 1066 is just always in my head. And two, that a lot of people say say theme when they mean topic. And so what the actual theme of a book is or the theme of your writing is, a lot of people don't actually know what that is or how to find that or how to
Yeah.
write to it.
Yeah.
So that's what we're going to talk about.
Yeah.
But
Exciting.
yeah.
I've been getting more into it lately too, even in like including in my query letters and stuff. Cause like for some agents that I think honestly seem more to be interested in certain themes than certain genres.
Mm-hmm.
I'll be like, oh, okay. And I'll like delve into the themes a little bit in my query letter.
Mm-hmm.
Which because I understand themes better now. I think I probably also used to get these mixed up all the time. I probably
Yeah.
still do occasionally. Or it's another one of those things where sometimes people use them interchangeably in conversation. So they might even know what the difference is, but in conversation,
Mm-hmm.
sometimes we switch them up. But it is good to
Exactly.
know that there is a difference so you can be specific.
Right.
Yeah. So, I mean, you've thought about this a
Sure.
lot, so you can
I have.
probably state it better than me.
I also just come out and say it what it is. So, a topic is basically the subject that you want to tackle with your writing, right? So, a
Mhm.
topic is going to be something like grief or the evils of the entertainment industry or
Yep.
family and family
Mhm.
troubles. The theme is your specific stance on that
Mhm.
topic.
Yes.
So, for instance, if you say the theme of this book is about grief, no, it's not. The
No,
topic is
that's
about
the
grief.
topic. Yeah.
The theme is going to be something like grief becomes easier when you're surrounded by people who love you, or maybe you go darker
Yes.
with the theme and say something like grief is completely insurmountable until you get revenge, or something like that.
Yeah.
Sorry, I'm going to clear my throat. So basically, your theme is going to be a longer statement and it's going to have a particular stance. And I think a
Yeah.
lot of times readers and writers feel hesitant to say that their story or someone else's story is saying something so specific because they don't want to put words in people's mouths, or
Mhm.
they don't want to take a stand themselves and kind of
Yeah.
indicate what they thought of it and what they think it's saying, because it does reveal a lot about you. It reveals a lot about you as a person when you're the writer, and it reveals a lot about you as a person when you're the reader and what you get out of something.
True.
Because themes are very debatable. I don't know that topics are debatable. If your story is about grief, it's about grief.
I
But
agree.
what a reader gets out of that and the theme that they get out of it is going to be specific to their worldview, to the
Mhm.
author's worldview, and how those are meshing.
It's
And
true.
that's why reading is such a unique, individualized experience. And that's why it's so
Mhm.
great.
Yep.
But it is also very personal. And so it can
Yeah.
feel kind of strange to come out and say directly, this is a theme I'm going for, or this is a theme I got out of this. And so I think people just kind of steer toward topic more often when they talk about theme because it's easier and it doesn't have a moral statement behind it.
I agree.
So yeah. Did you want to say
And
something?
Yeah, and we've talked
Okay.
about it before how it's not your responsibility what your readers take out of your book. It's your
Hmm.
responsibility what you give to your readers. So
Right.
you want to know for you what your topic is and you want to know what your theme is. If your readers take something completely different out of that, that is completely their thing, their responsibility. You just
Hmm.
need to know that you've given them your best. And it's
Right.
okay if they get something else completely different about this. This is why a lot of great classic and inspiring works of literature were written by people that were kind of assholes, and this is why I
Yeah.
do, for the most part, say I do think it's important to separate the art from the artist
Hmm.
because of how individually interpreted every piece of art, including stories, are. But
Hmm.
still, if an artist didn't put loads and loads of work into a piece of art, there wouldn't be nearly as much like content there for people to pull
Yeah.
themes from. So it's important for you to know. And you can make a public statement about what the theme is. Although I kind of respect when authors don't do that as well.
Hmm.
I
Leave
like
it
when
to
they
the
talk
readers.
about like their own personal life and beliefs, but when they
Hmm.
leave it to the readers, they're not like, oh yeah, I wrote this book to say this, you know? I kind of prefer when they don't do that specifically,
Hmm.
because of I like the individuality of the interpretation.
Yes.
But I agree. So for example, one of the topics of my book is division, but because
Hmm.
I've been thinking about how to frame this. The
Yeah.
theme of this book and larger theme of the whole series is the unexpected dangers of division, if that
Hmm.
makes sense.
Right.
So that is, and there's a lot more to delve into. I feel like it's
Yeah.
in a more like specific train of thought. And in the other books, I
Right.
could kind of like go off of that, and some things are related because if one side of the issue is division, the other side is unity. So what are the pros and cons of unity, and
Yeah.
what are the different types of unity? And so if you're in a series, it can be really beneficial to know what your primary theme, or at least your starting theme that inspired your first book in the series, is, because then you can look at related themes and kind of branch off, because you should have an overarching theme for your entire series. For this one, I
Hmm.
do think it's going to be the many dangers of division. And there's a lot more I could say about that theme because, like you said, themes are longer. But if I have to
Hmm.
really summarize that theme, it's
Yeah.
division is dangerous.
Well, and they're
And
hard to phrase too, but just to like
yes.
interject there, it's really hard to come up with like a single sentence. It's kind of like your thesis sentence in an essay.
Hmm.
It's
Yeah.
so hard to pack it into one statement. And so a lot of
Yeah.
time, I do think themes, you're free to say like two, three sentences because in
Hmm.
a series, especially, it gets very complicated. And that's
Yeah.
good.
It really does. But I
Yeah.
think if you know what your overarching one is for your whole series, it's easier to take related like themes and then kind of parse through those in
Yes.
the rest of your books. And I do think that all of your primary themes should be somewhat related to each other. Because if you have
Hmm.
like one book that's about like the danger of division, and your next book, the primary theme, and the other one's gone, is about like rape culture or something, which by the way is a
Yeah.
topic, but take whatever your opinion is
Right.
on rape culture, and XYZ is there's your theme.
Right.
Those are really not related themes. They are both themes that definitely are worth talking about,
Hmm.
but they are not related. So unless that's going to be like a tiny little sub theme,
Yeah.
it doesn't make sense for that to be your primary theme in a series where your first primary theme was completely different.
Yeah.
So
They
you
need
do
to be
kind of need to think
related.
about that. It's true. And if you have a theme that's kind of shallow, like my saying the division is dangerous sounds like something that could be just addressed in one book. There's a lot more to
Hmm.
it, but I'm just to briefly
Right.
summarize is that something that sounds like that shallow that you could summarize that quickly might not have enough content to drag out through a series. So you
Hmm.
might have to pick a different theme or make that a sub theme and then pick a
Yeah.
different primary theme, and then either go back and rework it or make sure you've written your outline in a way that includes things that point to that theme. So
Hmm.
I think it's important to think about your theme in regard to the bigger picture of your story as a whole, especially if it's a series, and to see how far you can take it. Because if it's
Yeah,
something you
for
feel like you
sure.
can tell well enough, kind of summarize in one book, great. Either that's a
Hmm.
standalone, or you can't use that theme for the rest of your series. So it's
Right.
sometimes better if you're planning like a 5-book series to pick like a more complex theme so you can break off into sub themes.
Yeah, exactly. I think so speaking of series and themes, I think a really good example of this is the I'm gonna forget what the series is called if it's not just the first book's name. The first book is A Thousand Pieces of You. It's by Claudia Gray. And it's about like alternate dimensions. And it's a
Ooh.
trilogy, and I really love it. No one really talks about it. They have beautiful covers. You probably would recognize the cover if you're like 22 or older because they
Mhm.
were around for a while.
Yeah.
But it's like the really pretty skyline, and it's like flipped like a mirror
Oh,
image
okay. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
below. And the great thing about this series and what I loved about it, even though I actually didn't agree with a lot of the themes, but what I loved about it was how book 2 and then book 3 built on themes from book 1.
Mm-hmm.
So a lot of the themes surrounding it are kind of like this idea of soulmates and fate and destiny and where your choices play into things. Again, that's not a theme. That's
Love
not
that.
specific enough to be a
It's
theme,
a
but I don't want to
topic.
spoil things for you guys.
Yeah.
And so the first book is kind of around this idea of like soulmates and destiny definitely do exist. And then the second book kind of goes into this, but your choices might actually be more important kind of a thing. Maybe soulmates don't exist. Maybe destiny doesn't exist. And it's just a matter of who you are by nature that is playing into all of these decisions you're making.
Mm-hmm.
And then book 3 just kind of brings it all together in this combination of like, maybe it can be both.
Yeah.
And I really loved how that built over the series. So if you guys are kind of confused, you're like, I haven't read any good series with really good themes lately, I would recommend that one, especially if you like alternate dimensions, because it's very fun.
I agree.
But I tend toward the idea of the both theory, but a little more toward the idea of like soulmates and destiny theory. So book 2 made me really angry, but I really loved it because it executed it so well anyway.
Yeah.
And that's really what I think sometimes people miss with themes is you don't have to agree with the theme to agree that it's well executed and to learn something from it.
Exactly.
So I think I kind of said before that when a reader reads a book, they're taking their own worldview and then the worldview of the author, and then those are combining into whatever the reader gets out of that book. And that's why that's why you can have the same topic in like 2,000 books and readers are going to get completely different things out of all of them. They're going to have completely different experiences because of the author and then their own experiences at various times in life when they read those books. And I think it's important to keep in mind that, I mean, you as a person should think that your theme is true, but it doesn't necessarily have to be something that's going to ring true for everyone for it to still make them think and for it to, which is really the idea, is to make people think and have them consider, what is my worldview? What do I think about grief? What do I think about the entertainment industry? What do I think about division and all of this stuff? And to maybe not even necessarily change their mind, but to have a more nuanced perspective on it.
I completely
and so
agree.
I think that can be something, if you're thinking about your series, every book doesn't necessarily have to say every single thing you want to about that theme. You can then build on it as you go on. And laying a really solid groundwork, like 1,000 Pieces of You did in that first book, is really important so that book 2's themes make sense because you're building on those. And it might not be, understandable or comprehensible if you didn't have book 1 to really set the foundation, I guess. So some themes do take a longer time to expand upon. And I think that's really great. And if you're writing a series, it should be because you have something that complicated to say.
I think so.
And complicated isn't bad. It's good. It's not good or bad. It's whatever it is. So
I agree. I think a lot of us write stories and we have this kind of grandiose idea that we're going to change people's minds or make an impact or, be influential. And all those things are good. But I think a lot of us who have that in mind with our stories, not that it's not a bad thing to have in mind, but I think we're the ones who have a tendency to end up kind of soapboxing, which, as we've said in other episodes, is probably the worst thing you could do to make your point, because it's going to make people immediately recognize it as soapboxing and they're going to dig in their heels in their own perspective. The best way to not even influence someone, because it's not a trick, just truly like what Carissa said, to open their mind to maybe a more nuanced perspective. If you change their minds, great, but that's really not the goal. It's just to open people's minds enough that they are educated enough to make an informed opinion. And maybe they're just feel more informed on their own opinion now, and they just believe more firmly in the opinion they started with, even if it's different than yours. That is perfectly fine. I think what we all need, and as a culture, as a world, is for whatever your opinion is, know why you believe it and be open to hearing other people's perspectives. And if yours still stands up to that when you truly consider it, that's excellent and great. But a lot of us don't. And so intermixing your kind of message or what the change you want to make, you making your theme the primary delivery tool for that is just so much more effective. It's also so much nicer. It's soapboxing can be kind of arrogant and can be kind of annoying.
Yeah, it's rude.
It's kind of rude. Yeah, because it almost automatically seems to kind of like insult the intelligence of your readers.
Yeah, like, whereas, I know more about this than you, so you need to take on my opinion as your own.
Yes, exactly. Whereas, Ruby, please stop. There's no need for that. That cat's not going to be friendly. Stop it. Stop. Hi, come here. Come here. You're being a punk. You be quiet. No. You hear her growl at me?
Uh-huh.
Oh gosh. Ruby.
Alright.
Ruby. Stop. Sit down. Good girl. I need you to be calm. Yeah, I need you to. I'm sorry. Like, I hate to be calm.
I don't want to.
Anyway, I
Yeah.
had to put Ruby in all caps on my list. Come here. Oh, there's a puppy. That was the puppy
A
hitting the
disappearing
microphone.
puppy.
Puppy ASMR. Okay, so hello, Ruby. What was I saying? Theme.
I tried to keep track,
Wow,
but
I
I
had
have
a
now
really
forgotten.
good. I had a
know.
really good point to make too, and I hadn't even
What were we
gotten to
saying?
it. Thanks a lot, Ruby. I guess I can go with one thing about theme, I think, is if you're getting stuck, I think a good way to summarize your theme is kind of in an answer to a question. So ask yourself a question about your topic, and that there is your theme. So I'm trying to think of like in terms of like division, which is one of the topics, probably one of the primary topics in my book. Is division always dangerous, and how to recognize division is really more of the theme, but it's also kind of a question. And so the theme is kind of answering the question in the way the story is told. Yeah. So that was part of the point I was going to make, just as an example, but I had more and I don't remember. Yeah.
Later in the episode, just break in and tell us what the point was.
I will. So Ruby says themes are stupid, but Ruby is a puppy. So
she doesn't know what she's talking about. She's never read a book. So
you never read a book. You don't know how to read. She's in my lap. She's like, oh, Mom's been ignoring me all day. She just went, I don't know if the mic caught it.
The little growl. It's cute.
Sorry, continue.
So I guess what I'm going to say about like, if you're struggling to find your theme, this is what I've been doing for my standalone. So I wrote 4 books last year, 3 of which were standalones. And I noticed that this process kind of helped me. And I haven't done it yet with a series, but maybe someone can try it and tell me how it goes. What I did was I made sure to have my topic in mind before I went into it. So like, for instance, my nano project that I worked on, the topic that I was going to delve into was innocence. And like, what is innocence? Like really? Yeah. And I just wrote the first draft with only that. I didn't necessarily have a theme particularly in mind. I just wrote. And what happened is it just kind of, what I already thought of it, like in the back of my mind, just kind of came out in the writing, right? Yeah. Because you probably aren't sitting there thinking as consciously about what you think about specific issues like that as much as you think you are. You're probably just kind of going with what you've heard or what society tends to think or whatever, and you haven't necessarily thought about it super hard. So when you write, and this is why we say writing can be therapeutic and all of that kind of stuff, you almost learn what you think about it as you go. Yeah. And so I think leaving room for that in your first draft is a really good call. And then once you finish the draft, you sit down and specifically try to like have a thesis statement to say, okay, what is the theme that I'm going for? And once you have that statement, then you can edit from the beginning with that in mind to bring it kind of full circle from the beginning. And I've noticed that really helped me. I feel like my themes were really solid in the 3 standalones because I kind of went through that process. I had a topic in mind as I wrote the first draft, and then I had the theme specifically written out for all of the editing. Yeah. And so I think that can help because you might not necessarily know what you think about division or innocence or whatever it is that the topic is. And I think a lot of times most writers don't start out with a theme or a topic. They start out with a character or with a plot point or with a setting. And so giving yourself the freedom to kind of discover it along the way, I think is just a more organic way to let it happen. And it's going to be more honest. And I think it's going to come out really strongly at that point. So it's not that you can't plan for a theme. In a series, it might be best to plan for it just so that you know, okay, this is big enough to talk about over 3 books or more. Yeah.
But to plan like an entire book or entire series around a theme versus the other way that's when you get, I think, into more why not to bash Christian fiction. If you guys aren't new here, Chris and I are both Christians. Yeah. But we all know Christian fiction, some of it can be very cringy. Some of it's wonderful. I mean, look at C.S. Lewis. Look at Tolkien.
Mhm.
Some, especially fantasy, I would say Christian fantasy tends to be better,
It's top tier.
but
It's
a
good.
lot of it is awesome. It is often top tier.
Mhm.
However, more often than not, modern Christian fiction is not so great. And I think it's because they're kind of setting up in the reverse where they're like, this is the theme I want to talk about. And this is what I have to say. What kind of
Mhm.
story can I tell that theme with? Instead of
Right.
saying, here's the story, it's a great story already. What themes does this story just naturally touch on? And
Yes,
then
exactly.
going from there, which is more the process that other people do. So I
Mhm.
do think it's good to know for your whole series kind of like what themes you're going to play with. But I think writing the first book, or at least like heavily outlining or drafting your first book first, is a good way to kind of figure out what you do feel. Because the first time I
Mhm.
wrote this book, the one I was talking about with the themes of the dangers of division and all that stuff, I
Mhm.
hadn't thought about theme at all when I wrote it. I originally wrote it years ago, and then when I
Mhm.
did the rewrite of it and was rereading it, I was like, wow, this actually has some interesting things to say, I think, about
Mhm.
division, which had been something I'd been thinking about a lot lately. Because
Right.
also, just as you gain more life experience in different areas, some themes are just going to jump out at you more. And so
Yep.
I didn't realize I'd already kind of laid the groundwork to discuss this theme, but I didn't have anything to say about it when I wrote the book. When I went
Mhm.
back to rewrite the book, I actually had a lot to say about that theme because I've been thinking about it a lot. And so I
Mhm.
was able to refine the theme. So I think that
Exactly. Yeah.
happens too. So it's okay if you're writing a book the first time you don't have one. I would actually caution you, if you already have a theme in mind for your first book, that you don't just cement in your theme too hard,
Yeah.
because what if you change your mind
Exactly. And that's what I
about the
mean about
topic?
growing in it. Let it come
Yeah.
out naturally, because a lot of times I've gone into it saying this is going to be my theme. And as I'm writing, I'm like, wow, this has nothing to do with what's going on. But
Mm-hmm.
this theme has popped out and it's pretty good.
Yeah.
And I think this is what I do too. I like quotes will pop into my head and I'm like, oh my gosh, what a good like twist line or like end line for a book.
Yeah.
Write
I
it
agree.
down, but
Yep.
don't have this very specific idea of what book it needs to be used in or where or
Mm-hmm.
for what purpose. Just let it when the time comes for it, you'll remember and you can go back and put it in there. But don't necessarily, just because you're brainstorming for one book and that line occurs to you, don't feel like it
Yeah.
has to go in that book. It might work
Yeah.
better somewhere else.
Or in a different book, or in a
Mm-hmm.
project you haven't thought of yet.
Mm-hmm.
Definitely don't force something in. Definitely don't force any line in, and definitely not any theme in your book that doesn't actually contribute to plot or character development, which we talked
Yep.
a lot about. Because books are either plot driven or character driven. Those are like, the two main, or it can be maybe a
Basic.
combo. But
Mm-hmm.
if you are trying to force in a theme that doesn't contribute to either of those areas, it's not the right story for that theme, and that is
Mm-hmm.
okay. I promise you, there's already a theme in your story. Even the most like cringe books that I have edited for clients who I swear have not written since the third grade,
Mm-hmm.
even those books have themes. You already
You
have
can't
themes.
help
And if,
it.
yeah, you
Yeah.
can't, because you have ideas and opinions and experiences, and those come out in the themes in your book. And that's great. If you're having a hard time identifying which themes your story naturally leans towards, having someone else read it and then telling them and asking them what they learned from the book, like about humanity or life or whatever, is a really great way to learn what kind of themes are jumping out at people, and see if one of those is something that you want to make more of an intentional theme for that book.
Exactly. And yeah, I think that's a good way to put it. It's like an intentional thing you're doing in the book.
Yeah.
I think when you first write it, or even for a couple drafts, you don't have to be thinking about theme yet. You want to make sure that you're getting character and setting and plot right.
Yeah.
But at some point before it hits readers' eyes, it needs to have a very intentional theme that you've now gone back and said,
I
okay,
agree.
if I change this action in the beginning, it'll just go so much better. You really want to drive home that theme in every
Yeah.
line, in every character, and every plot point. And that sounds really hard, but it's not if you allow it to emerge naturally rather than trying to force the story to fit the theme.
Yeah,
So,
I agree. And I think it's important to keep in mind that a lot of these rules we're talking about only apply to first books or standalones. If you
mhm.
are writing like the second, third, fourth, fifth book in a series, I do think you should have an idea of the theme before. Because if you
Yeah.
don't, it'll feel like you just picked up out of nowhere. Because like
Mhm.
any part of your story, your second, third book, etc., should be leaving off from where the last book stopped in regard to plot, character development, and theme. And so
Yep.
it's important to know where you stopped on all of those aspects, so you know where to kind of pick up from and where you can like kind of like branch off with.
Mhm.
But yeah, for your first book in a series, or if it's a standalone, I don't think you need to know for the first draft or the first few drafts, even, because it might
Yeah.
jump out at you more. I definitely did not write this book and think this book's about division. which is a topic and not a
Right.
theme. But regardless, it never even remotely occurred to me that was not the intention. It just jumped out at me more afterwards.
Afterwards.
Yeah. So, and I mean, there are other themes as well. I think every book already has, one book has a bunch of different themes, and that's okay. But like, I could think of like 3 off the top of my head that are all in my head really closely related to that theme, because in the book they're all really closely related. So those are things I can get into more in the rest of the series, and I can hope that maybe my readers will get something out of it, although maybe they'll get the exact opposite out of it. Who knows? Because we've said this before, and kind of on the topic of theme, if you which was actually the correct usage of that, if you cannot make an argument for the opposing perspective of your theme, you probably don't know the topic well enough to make that your primary theme. You should be able to at least understand with empathy the opposite perspective, whether you agree with it or not. And that is what is going to give your theme the power to create nuance, if that makes sense, to create a mindset of nuance. So even for your readers who have the opposite perspective, they'll feel understood, seen, and they will have their intellect recognized just inherently by the way you've written the story and the way that you've crafted the communication of your theme. And so I think that that's the best way to actually be influential. But you do have to be influential, truly, genuinely, first know and care about the people who disagree with you and disagree with your take on that theme. So I think that that's important.
Yeah. And a lot of this too, it is kind of interesting that there are a lot of differences between fiction and nonfiction, but one kind of similarity is that the theme is like I said, your thesis statement of your fiction work. So nonfiction has a thesis and fiction has a theme, and they really do follow a lot of the same kind of guidelines. And if you've ever written an essay for a class, which I'm sure basically all of you have, you know that in order to make a good argumentative, a good persuasive essay or whatever, you have to have at least a couple sources for the opposite viewpoint to just prove like, I looked into this and I just disagree with it. I'm going to, I'm not just going to bash it needlessly. I'm not going to ignore it completely, but I'm going to build up a good argument for it and then tell you why I think it's wrong and why this is actually the correct way. And really, themes should be doing that, albeit subtly.
Yeah.
You don't want to necessarily directly state it. But that is kind of what you're doing. You're just doing it in a fictional way. To kind of say, here are kind of a couple perspectives on this, and here's the one that I think kind of shines through as the most obvious or the correct answer or the best answer or whatever you want to say it is. Also, it's now occurring to me because I've been watching that Unsolved Mysteries show. I wonder if the reason that we're very fascinated as human beings with like psychopaths is because they're the opposite viewpoint, and understanding them helps us understand our own empathy better.
It's very possible.
That might be it.
I think it's very, very possible. Yeah.
Which comforts me because that's a non-creepy reason to be fascinated with them, which is good for me.
I feel like I've been worried about myself until now. Now I'm fine.
I really do. Every once in a while, I kind of sit and I'm like, am I a psychopath? But then I watch an episode and I cry at stuff that happens. I'm like, no, I'm definitely not. I'm good. Fine. I have empathy.
Oh, that's super funny.
Really just in everything, you don't have to agree with an opposite viewpoint to understand what it is accurately, and then to just say, the people that believe this way aren't necessarily, I guess they could be, but they're not necessarily evil. They're not necessarily idiots. They just have a different priority system or whatever your argument is going to be. And so that's also kind of where sub-themes play into your story. You want to have sub-themes that are relevant to and playing into that main theme. And one of those sub-themes can be some kind of aspect of the alternate perspective. And that's going to really add to and enrich the argument that you're making by setting it up as either a contrast or, this is more similar than people give it credit for or whatever. I find that always really cool when you set up two perspectives that seem to be opposing, and then you look at all of the similarities between them and how like, okay, maybe these two people that claim to be on completely opposite sides are more similar than they think.
Yes, I love that.
Yeah, so you can do that. You can have a contradicting subplot, but it has to be related to the theme. I guess that's what I'm trying to say. It doesn't have to be, every single sub-theme doesn't have to be serving. Is that the right? I don't know how to say this. It doesn't have to be in agreement with, but it needs to be serving the main theme.
Yes,
It needs to
I
be
agree.
related to and correlated to, but it doesn't necessarily have to be in perfect agreement with it.
I agree.
Like I said,
I agree.
I agree. In A Thousand Pieces of You, the first two books have seemingly very different themes and contradictory themes, and then they come together in the third, and you realize, okay, they can both be true. And that's kind of, I don't know. I love themes that do that.
I love that too.
So it's pretty great.
It's a great tactic to take to say, hey, humans are largely more similar to each other than we are different. And there's a lot of validity in multiple perspectives, no matter what you believe. And maybe some things are actually more gray than they are black and white. And there's some validity in different times and different occurrences to those different themes. So I think that's a great thing to do. I think if you are not, like we said, if you don't know the opposite side's perspective and why they feel that they're correct, then you're not going to be able to do that, where you should at least display a little bit of like theme wise, at least like a sub theme here or there from the other perspective, because that's what makes people feel seen and heard. And if they don't feel seen and heard, they're not going to listen to what you have to say. So I think that that's a great point.
Yeah. And also, this is where the difference between topic and theme also comes in. That topic is something like, I guess I'll just go with yours, like division, right?
Yeah.
But then your theme can be completely opposite. You can both, two writers can be writing on the topic of division.
Division can be a great thing in different situations. Division is always wrong, or it could be something, in the middle.
Exactly.
So, which is probably mine.
Topic is significantly broader, and you can have two people writing on the same topic with completely different perspectives on it, which gives them different themes. And that's kind of why I think this is also potentially a genre difference. If you enjoy fantasy, if you enjoy sci-fi, whatever, a lot of the topics tend to be very similar, but I do think the themes are different, and that's what makes it fun and interesting and possible for people to read hundreds and hundreds of books in the same genre over and over, because it's not the same story. Even if it has the same tropes, even if it has the same topics, the themes are different, and you're getting a new perspective on it. And that's really, I think that's really what people are reading for. And I don't know that a lot of people necessarily sum it up in those words.
Yeah.
But we've kind of talked before about how certain tropes go with different themes better, like an enemies to lovers versus a friends to lovers just inherently have different themes. And so I think if you say you like a trope, what you're actually saying is, I like the themes that tend to accompany this.
Yeah, I think so.
And so I'm just going to branch off a little bit and talk. I think one of the big issues that I see in a lot of books that are being published is with the romantic subplot, and the fact that too many times people treat them like topics instead of themes. So for anything to be in your book, it needs to be serving that theme, from the dialogue to the plot twist to everything. And again, if it's coming out naturally, that's not as hard as it sounds.
That's just what happened.
Yeah, but if you're shoehorning stuff into a book because you think it's what readers want, or you're writing to market or whatever, it comes across as really flat. And I think there are a lot of romantic subplots that are written as though they were kind of shoehorned in. They're just a topic. People are just saying, I like romance. Okay, but what do you think about it? What is your stance on it? That's going to be a theme. And so if you have nothing to say about romance, if you have nothing to say about romantic love or lust or whatever it is, that subplot is going to detract from the main theme, or just fall really flat and make it seem less potent. And so it happens with other aspects as well, but I see it a lot with romantic subplots, because I think so many people want romance in their books, and especially in the YA fantasy realm. So, and that's normal, and that's fine, and that's great. But are you actually saying something with it, or are you just putting it in there because you think it's a staple of the genre? So if you find that you're kind of struggling with the romantic subplot, or any kind of subplot going on, if it's not fitting, or if it's not, ringing as true as the rest of the story, it might be because it's either not necessary, or because you need to add some kind of a thematic element to it. Just saying there's romance in this book isn't enough. That's a topic. You need to have some kind of theme surrounding it as well.
I agree. And I think it can sound kind of, what we're talking about can kind of sound abstract. And that's really why I struggled with understanding theme and how to apply theme and how to refine theme. So just to try and put it in more concrete terms, if that's useful for anyone, because I wish somebody had for me, I think that theme is often best displayed in conflict and the way that characters respond to that conflict. So I've like a particular villain or like an organization that's causing problems. Basically, the antagonist is creating a problem. Maybe because that antagonist believes, I guess, like we'll take from my book, the antagonist believes that there's power in division, that kind of concept. And so the protagonists are going to respond to that opinion and the choices that the antagonist is making based on that opinion and that belief. They're going to respond in a different way. And if they respond in a way that is in agreement with that theme, then, and it's successful, well, then now it's kind of says to your readers that I think that there's power in division. Whereas if the protagonists respond to that antagonist's actions in the opposite, and they fight them or there's conflict or whatever, it kind of speaks to the opposite. Like clearly, for whatever reason, the protagonists disagree, do not think that there is power in division, or at least not in the way that the antagonist thinks that there is. And then we can see, because the other like supporting characters, like the other hero type characters in the book, will be displaying a different perspective on division. Like maybe it's not so great, or maybe we should be really careful about it, or how to recognize it, or yada, yada. And that's kind of how you communicate the theme in a practical sense, I feel like, is your primary conflict should have something to say about the theme or about the topic. And then your character's choices are basically what define the theme, if that makes sense, how they respond to that topic. So I think that that's, in more concrete terms, conflict is topic, and then character's response to topic defines your theme, if that helps at all.
I think also, to add on to that, the topic is really going to be your plot, and the theme is potentially going to be the consequences of the plot, which is kind of what you're saying. But true. I think, I don't really want to talk about this, but I'm going to. If you look at sex in something like YA in particular, really, a lot of people over the past couple of years have been saying, like, we want sex positive books, or we want, XYZ out of these relationships.
Yeah.
And what they're saying isn't actually that they want romances to work differently. What they're saying is they want different themes. Because if you have a book in which two characters sleep together and then there's terrible fallout afterwards, you're saying something with that. You're saying that there is something maybe more moral or valuable or intimate about that topic than someone who has no consequences for their characters after they sleep together. And so I think that's actually a good measure of where themes can go right or wrong, because if your major theme isn't being backed up by that, if there are no consequences for this action, but there are consequences over here, what are you saying with that? Or if there are consequences here, but not over here. I know a big debate is often about sex and violence, and why a lot of people are okay with violence, but not sex. And I think it's often with the consequences and the way it's portrayed. I agree.
Yeah.
And so
I think it's often portrayed with almost no consequence at all. And that is not accurate to real life. So that's somewhere where your theme is going to fall flat if it has something to do with romance, because that's not real.
Exactly.
And this is not like me being a prude thing, though I am absolutely a prude. It's that every action has an equal and opposite reaction. We've all learned this for forever. Nothing doesn't have, there is always an outcome, and your outcome is your theme. So I feel like if your characters are having sex and there's absolutely no outcome, good or bad, I feel like that's saying sex doesn't matter, because everything you do says something. I think that's saying sex doesn't matter. And it also cheapens all of the relationships the character had, because it would be implied, well, maybe those are meaningless if there was absolutely no consequence to them, good or bad. And consequence doesn't always mean bad. And this applies to, when characters have sex in books, when a character is killed in a book, whatever's going on in the book, and there's no, even making no consequence is still making a statement. But I feel like 90% of the time when there's no consequence, you're making a statement you didn't mean to make. Usually that's an accident. Usually you have an opinion. So I think it's just knowing what you're portraying about what you believe. And it's okay, again, if readers take something differently. But I know, as an artist and myself, and as a writer myself, it's important to me to know that I at least communicated accurately, at least as accurately as I can, what I believe and why I believe it. And part of that is also just lends authenticity to your book, because realistically, people don't have sex and there's no reaction afterwards at all. Like there's something positive, negative, somewhere in between. There's always something. And so it's unrealistic for there to not be a consequence. if a character dies, it's unrealistic that there's no other
No
effects of
grief
that. There's no
or
grief.
yeah.
There's no tension. There's no, mourning family. There's no
Mhm.
billboards with drive safe on the highway.
Mhm.
There's always effects to everything, and that's where your theme shines through.
Yeah, exactly. So I think it comes through, like you said, in the choices and essentially in what choices are rewarded and which
Yes.
choices aren't. And I
Yep.
think this is particularly strong in middle grade and YA. I think when you start getting to NA and adults, the consequences become a little more ambiguous, which is probably why I don't like those as much.
Yeah.
Um, but they are still there, and you are still saying something when
Yeah.
you portray consequences and choices and all of that. And so you're right, that is a concrete way to kind of say where the theme is. And kind of just like we said before, different characters should have different perspectives, and you can
Yeah.
look at which characters with different perspectives are still getting along, which characters with different perspectives are still on the same side.
Mm-hmm.
And this is something I like about a lot of dystopian books too, where you'll
It's
have
true.
I is it Hunger Games where in District 13 the leader of
Mm-hmm.
District 13 comes in, and it's like a kind of different worldview than Katniss has, but they can work together for a certain
Yeah.
period of time. That whole relationship and the start and the middle and the end contributes to the theme. And
Yeah.
so when you have different characters with different point of views, seeing how they get along in a romantic relationship, in a friendship, in
Yeah.
a kind of forced to work together for a war kind of a
Yeah.
relationship, that's those kinds of decisions and those kinds of partnerships are where that theme is going to come out. And if you have like a contemporary book and there's no war going on or anything like that, it still is occurring in the relationships, it's still occurring in the
Yeah.
consequences and the choices. So
Yeah. Exactly.
that's where you want to make sure that if your character seems to be acting out of character or it's not really
Mm-hmm.
jiving with the rest of the book, it's probably because they're acting in a way that isn't contributing to your theme, and you need to either
Yeah.
change the character or change the theme to accommodate that.
Yeah, I agree. I think another good example of characters that work well together, but they're like as characters, their own personal like life themes and beliefs are in conflict are Kaz Brecker and Inej from Six
Hmm.
of Crows. They both
Yeah.
have very different ideas about things, and yet they're still very close. They still work together. But I think Leigh Bardugo says something about the theme of kind of like the value of life, if that makes sense. Because Inej refuses, in spoiler, in the first book at least, Inej refuses to kill because you
Mhm.
must. So that makes you assume in some way, in some sense, life must be sacred to Inej in a way that it's not to Kaz Brecker, because
Yeah.
Kaz Brecker doesn't bat an eye at violence of any kind.
True.
He uses it as a tool.
Right.
However, one of these characters has successful, somewhat healthy relationships and hope for the future, whereas the other one is kind of just really depressed. And so
Mhm.
throughout this, it's a duology, and so more spoilers, but so throughout this duology, basically the one's belief in the value of life and in the choices that she makes, putting people first and not choosing violence, basically the outcome of that ends up kind of rewarding her, versus
Mhm.
every time Kaz makes a decision that kind of reduces the value of another person's life, or would imply that he doesn't value their life or whatever, or he's unnecessarily violent, that kind of thing, there's
Mhm.
usually a negative consequence. So just the fact that you have differing themes, and one tends to have, and both of them have very hard lives. It's not like
Yeah.
one has an easy life and the other doesn't,
No.
but one's decisions in regard to that specific theme tend to result in better things than it does for the other. Even that says something. So
Mhm.
sometimes including, and the reason Kaz believes what he believes is very valid, and same for Inej.
Mhm.
So it's not devaluing either perspective either, which
Right.
is why it's so impactful to see the outcome and to see what it says about that theme in general. So
Mhm.
I think that there can often be a lot of value to that, which is also might be why people like Enemies to Lovers so much. Like
Mhm.
Serpent and Dove by Shelby Mahurin. I bring it up all the time, but
Yep.
that's another one where, and haven't really thought about the theme too much in that one, to be honest, but those two main characters are about as opposite gets. And I would bet good money that their personal beliefs are, especially in regard to theme, are in direct opposition. And of course, spoiler, Lou, the main character, the chick, she's the main character. So obviously she's going to learn something, and her good or
Mhm.
bad or whatever. And so I would say that her personal theme is probably more what we're supposed to be learning, if that makes
Yeah.
sense. So
It's
there
more
are
front and
examples of
center.
this. Yeah, it's more front and center, which might
Yeah.
also be what I like so much about enemies to lovers, is that we get to see these multiple perspectives and the results of these different themes.
Mhm.
But they come together to support the primary theme.
Right.
So that's the point.
Yeah. Is Serpent and Dove a dual perspective? Dual point of view?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So this is another thing, like the romantic subplot thing, that I think dual point of views are really hit or miss. And I think a lot of it comes down to theme. If you have two points of view and they basically think the same things, it's not necessary for them both to be there. But if one of them disagrees, now
Yep.
you have potentially contradicting or mirroring or, just serving themes between both of them
Yeah.
to kind of play off of each other and say, okay, well, if this character feels like this and this character feels like this, who's right? Who's wrong? Are they both right and both wrong in different ways?
Yeah.
And so that carries so much farther than if the characters are basically similar, but maybe just have, slightly different perspectives on things that don't matter as much.
I agree.
Um, so yeah, I just think if you're finding that something is off in your book, if it's the point of view, if it's the romantic subplot, if it's some kind of character action that just doesn't jive, I think a lot of it comes down to theme. And I think a lot of advice that people get is you need to focus on your character development and you need to focus on your plot. And that very well may be true, but
Mhm.
really all of that comes down to theme and what you're trying to say with the book. And it all needs to be in service of that theme.
I agree.
So, because ultimately, when a reader walks away from your book, the details are going to fade. They're going to forget the specific character names and when this happened to who and what the plot twist was. But they're going to remember kind of like how it made them feel, right? And what they
Yeah.
learned from it and how it changed
Yeah.
them. And that's really the theme. That's really what readers are walking away from. So
Yes.
yeah.
I totally agree. I'm thinking of all the themes in A Thousand Heartbeats, which also
Mhm.
has some opposite themes, and I can't say anything because it's so new, so I will spoil it for everybody.
Right.
But the theme that ends up being like the primary theme, I think is very supported by the characters' beliefs that are different, but they're both really interesting and very valid.
Mhm.
And I think probably she did such a good job displaying the other side of the issue that that's
Mhm.
probably why I'm thinking that Kendall liked the guy so much, even though she typically
Yeah.
wouldn't.
Right.
So I'm curious to see if you feel the same way.
Yeah.
But I would say Kira Cass is actually not a bad example at all, even though I've called her other books fluff. And I don't mean that in like a they're not well written way, like I said before.
Mhm.
They're sweeter, is the way to say it. They're like cotton candy fluff. They're sweet. Um,
Mhm.
but they all have really good themes in them too. She's actually very good at weaving in themes. So even like she has some themes that are, or their topics about violence against women, and the themes are more specific than that. But that's a really hefty theme. Any kind of theme that has to do with violence against women, that's
Mhm.
hefty. And she
Right.
actually addresses those, even in those books that are a lot sweeter. So then that's just one of them. So there are some really interesting themes in her book. She's actually a really good, that's actually a really good, anything by Kira Cass is a good idea to read if you want themes. And even really serious ones that are done in a really palatable way. So you don't have to be making like some big dramatic statement in your story. But I do think it's why she's been so successful, is because she does have something to
Mm.
say, even if she says it in a nice way.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, and I think that's ultimately what writing is really about, is having something to say. And
Yep.
like we said, no soapboxing, but
No.
I do think that the draw to write comes first before necessarily your worldview is totally intact. But I
I
do
think
think that
so.
writing is a really good way to explore it.
I
And
agree.
I kind of think sometimes about like, okay, what if I publish a book and then 10 years later I no longer agree with my theme, right? But
Yep.
ultimately, I think I would still be okay with that because it was a part of the growth that would get me to that later point.
Yeah.
And maybe it's something that other people need to consider or should consider or whatever.
Yeah.
So, like I said, like you don't have to agree with themes in a book you're reading to love the book. You don't have to necessarily agree with your own themes because
Yeah.
if you're writing a story with like a morally gray character, which is something I did in my NaNoWriMo project, right?
Mm-hmm.
Don't like her as a person, and I don't even fully agree with everything that even happens to her, but it's saying
Yeah.
something interesting and something that I think needs thought, and
Yeah.
that's the theme. That's what you're trying to say when you're writing, and
Yeah.
so I do think it's good. I think particularly if you're an indie author, this is something good to consider, is that before you publish, make sure that you do have a good idea of what the theme is. Again, readers are going to interpret it differently. They might have a completely different perspective on what it means. But I think you as a person need to be able to sum it up to some extent, whether it's a paragraph or a sentence, to know, okay, I am saying something with this. I'm not going to come back to it later and, find it shallow or find it, just like a beginning work. So that you can still feel proud of it later on, even if your opinion has changed. I think in traditional publishing, this probably just happens more naturally by nature of how long it takes. You have more time to think about the book and to really mull it over so that the theme comes out. So yeah, I just think this is also why it's a good idea to spend a lot of time on an individual book, and why I think resting the book is a good idea, because you want to make sure that you are effectively and correctly indicating the theme you're trying to. And that's an important factor of it. So
I agree. Totally agree.
Yeah.
Anything else you want to say about theme? Sorry.
I was just going to say, I don't even know if I said this in direct words, but I am going to say it now about the whole series issue. That I said, like, start your first draft with a topic and then figure the theme out along the way in a standalone. If you're doing a series and you're kind of plotting out the series, I think it's a good idea to have your topic in hand. And then at that point, like we've said, you can have totally different themes on the same topic. Just make it an exploration of that topic in particular, the whole series. And I think a theme will still emerge even, 5 books later. So I do think it's a good idea to have some kind of concept of what your theme is supposed to be. But if you don't necessarily know and you want the series to kind of be just an exploration of that topic, because a lot of times people will say this, they're like, the book is just an exploration of XYZ. Really, it's not. Really, there is ultimately a moral statement being made in it, but it might, you might have to dig for it a little more, or it might not be as obvious. But if you have that topic to begin with, I think that's a good starting place. And even if you kind of like run in circles a little bit or turn back on your path or anything, it's still going to ultimately contribute to the conclusion of that journey and what people are going to get out of the series. So
yeah,
whatever works for you, just try it. If you do like having the theme up front, if you don't like having the theme up front, whatever. But I do think it's important to have topic. And that's why I think it's an important distinction between the two, just kind of bring everything back. That if you understand that topic is just the subject matter and the issue you're going to be dealing with, and the theme is your particular stance on it, then it becomes much easier to just understand what I need to start this book is absolutely the topic, but I don't necessarily need to know the theme. I can figure that out along the way as I get to know myself through writing the book. So I think that's why it's an important distinction to just keep in mind, so that you don't find yourself stressing over trying to find a theme to start with or having no topic in mind at all.
I agree. So. I think that's a great point. If you are unsure of theme, that's okay. Just know your topic. And your topic is probably already in there. Like long before I had this theme, when I first wrote this book, the topic of division was primary. I mean, it was central to the plot of the book. So it was already there. I just didn't know that I had thoughts and feelings on it, and which had become more refined since I first wrote it. And that became the theme. But you probably already have a topic. So just check it out. If you don't, pick one. You probably can. If you're still early enough in the process that you can't recognize a topic, pick one. You probably can. And that's kind of fun to get to pick a topic. I don't know that I've ever done that, but that seems like a Kira Cass move. I don't know if that's what she does or not, but I wouldn't be surprised if she did.
Right. Yeah. It is. It's fun. Anyway,
is that everything? Okay, sweet.
I think so.
All right, sweet. Well, in that case, how's writing been going?
Writing's been great. Actually, this conversation was really good for me because, like I said, I've been kind of brainstorming some other ideas because I think I want to start working on writing another book. And I've been really
out of control, Harlow. Out of control.
I know. I'm okay with this kind of chaos though. So I had 2 ideas that I was going back and forth between. And then yesterday I was like, you know what? Let's just add a 3rd idea to the mix. And I started brainstorming that one.
Oh my God. I'm realizing me with farm projects.
yeah, exactly. I realize what I'm struggling with is the topic and what I really want to delve into, because with the other books that I wrote last year, I really had a solid idea of topic and kind of like a ghostly image of the theme, right? It wasn't like solid yet, but it was blurred in there. And for these, I just have nothing. All I have is setting and plot elements. Ooh. And I don't know if I've talked about this before. I typically come up with setting and plot elements first. Like characters don't necessarily come to mind. I usually cultivate a character to fit the setting and the plot as opposed to the other way around. And that's not
I'm
right
the
or wrong.
opposite.
You can you can do it either way. But I definitely start with setting and plot, and sometimes with like a sort of topic or theme, which is just my process or whatever. But I am struggling to find a topic slash theme for any of these ideas, which I think I've now realized is the problem. So now I'm like, okay, well, what if I just pick a topic and just see how the brainstorming goes from there?
You should. That sounds
Yeah,
exciting.
I should.
Yeah.
So yeah, I'm excited about that now. I think I know the one I want to work on just because I have all of the character names. Like I've said, I have to have the character names to start with because it's so hard for me to change them later on. Like mentally, I can't handle it. So I like to have the names first so that I know who I'm dealing with. And I have all the names for this one. Is the third idea that occurred to me just yesterday. But I'm like, I feel like this could be good. So I'm gonna see. It has kind of some elements of The Mask of the Red Death by Edgar Allan Poe. Yeah, just mostly in setting.
Interesting.
But possibly in theme. I'm not sure. I don't know yet.
Oh my goodness.
So I'm excited about that prospect. We'll see if I can but I think I'm going to try and give all three an equal chance and just say, what could any of your topics be? And then see which one kind of glows a little bit as a decent idea.
Glows a little bit.
You know, because I'm insane.
I love it.
Yeah, so that's what I also, gosh, I love cursive. Have I said that before? Writing in cursive just makes me feel epic and awesome. And so I've been writing all of my brainstorming out in cursive. It is fantastic. I have this notebook and the pages write so well. It's awesome. So I've just been writing in cursive a lot while I'm watching Netflix, which is strangely good for the creative process. So random writer's block tip. If you are struggling to brainstorm something, have like a Netflix thing on in the background or whatever like show you're watching or music maybe, and just sit there and write things. Literally just anything. I have pages in this notebook full of just words in cursive, not sentences, just words. And eventually as you're writing them, one word is going to kind of stick out and you're like, ooh, okay, maybe that's a topic. Maybe that's a character thing. Maybe that's a plot thing. So that's what I've been doing, and it's taking a lot of paper, but I have a lot of journals, so I don't feel bad about it.
Heck yeah. I love it.
So there's that. And then also I said before, I finished like a really cursory kind of read through. I don't even know that I would call it an edit, but I did change a couple things of my nano project that I worked on. And so I mean, I changed something. I mostly just took notes on things future me has to change, but that's progress. So
that's for later you. That's for future Carissa. Let her deal with that.
Yeah, that's her problem. So yeah, it's just, I mean, so now I'm just sitting on that full response from the agent for the past hour or two, and I don't know what to do with that.
Wait to hear. I want to know
so anxious and excited and on the brink of possible devastation. But I'm just thinking too still about like, where can I put my best effort to get published, obviously, because I want to write a lot of books in my lifetime, but which one should I write now so that I get in the door? And I just can't tell. I'm trying to work on the idea that's best for that. And I don't feel ready to edit yet the other projects that I finished last year. And so I feel like writing is a good way to go, but we'll see. That was a super chaotic update. But it's a lot of things that I just, basically, I don't know what I'm doing. I'm still deciding is what's actually happening. But I feel happy. I feel happy with that edit that I did, if it can be called that. And I feel good about all three of these ideas. I guess I really can't go wrong with them, except I don't want to get to a point where I write like, you know, a quarter of a draft and then I lose my motivation for it and let it sit there, because I haven't done that in a really long time. It's been a really long time since I've started a draft and not finished it like within a reasonable amount of time. So I feel like if I do that, I'm going to totally lose all my steam, and I don't want to do that. So I don't know. It's a lot of stuff going through my brain, but ultimately good, and I'm excited about it. And what is your update?
My update is I have not written anything, which I already said before. I did get a request for a partial, which is very exciting. And so I'm querying a bunch. I've been sending a bunch of queries. So that's been fun as well. I'm trying to think. I feel like I did something else writing wise. I have done a lot of
Brainstorming?
brainstorming. Yeah,
Yeah.
I've done a lot of brainstorming and I want to sit down and write, but I'm like, I am getting distracted by stuff that needs to get done. I get like spring fever like a couple months earlier, I think, than like the spring cleaning fever. I think I just get it a
Yeah.
couple months earlier. I always have. Whenever I'm like Christmas is done, my brain is like winter should be over now. And so everything that you do to get ready for spring, especially on the farm, that's a lot. My brain is like, we're in get ready for spring and summer mode,
Mhm.
which is a little frustrating because I didn't get to write during winter either. Well, that's not true.
Right.
I got to write a little bit during winter, but I think if I can get a lot of this stuff out of the way now, I'm trying to, I know it just sounds like I'm procrastinating, but I'm not. I'm doing what I do, whereas I'll work until like 9 or 10 p.m. until I get to watch TV. And but the thing is, I want to get everything done ahead of time, like I used to do with my homework, so then I can have a
Mhm.
really big chunk of time to just relax.
Yeah.
So the reason I seem like I'm procrastinating with all of these farm chores and projects is I'm like, if I just get these all out of the way now, then I'll be able to actually focus on my writing in my free time. So that is the overall goal. Whether or not that's
Mhm.
actually going to work or not remains to be seen. I am going to try to take a break from projects after I get this last couple things built. Well, there's really just one more thing I need to build. Other than that, it's just taking some crap out of the chicken coop. So
Mhm.
I am trying to set myself up for success is what I'm doing, but I think I sometimes spend so much time setting up for success that then I don't have time to actually do what I was trying to set myself up for success for.
Yeah.
So I'm in that weird, awkward area right now, but I'm trying because I want to finish writing this book. Although in my brain, I'm like, why am I writing this book? It's totally science fiction, which is very hard to get published, first of all. But I'm
Mhm.
also like, it is in third person. So it's really good practice for the other book I want to write that I think will be great and totally publishable. But
Yeah.
I'm not super confident in my ability to write third person. So I think I should at least write a whole book in third person.
Mhm.
I think I've only done that once before, and it was a while ago. So that's exciting. I've done a lot of world building because of D&D,
Yeah.
for the other book actually.
Mhm.
So I am doing stuff, but like I totally refine my world map, which actually gives me like way more freedom to know where to take not only the rest of the books in this series in the book that I'm querying, but that other book that I want to write that I think will be like really, really good.
Mhm.
So just lots of prep work all around, prep work for the farm, prep work for getting time to finish writing my sci-fi book, and all of this like world building and brainstorming work for this other book. Plus, I'm also like, what if I write this other book I've been toying with and I release it week by week as a podcast? Wouldn't that be
Ah,
fun? So
that
I
would be
think that would
cool.
also be really fun. I just don't know if I can do it.
Right.
So I am in a creative mode. So hopefully
Mhm.
I can organize my brains and thoughts and time while I'm still in creative mode, but we'll see.
Yeah.
That's pretty much my writing update.
Nice.
Yeah.
Cool.
Anything else that you want to say to listeners?
Nope.
All right. Well, if you guys enjoyed this episode, you guys, it would be wonderful if you'd go below and rate us. Give us 5 whole stars if you loved us. And if you didn't love us, still give us 5 whole stars. If there is something you would like us to talk about on this podcast, you guys can email us at contact@storysirenstudio.com. That's our production company. Or you can message us on social media. We are on Instagram. We are on TikTok. We are the Scripturient Society. There's a lot of fun stuff on both of those platforms if you are a writer of any kind. So please go check it out. Lots of really funny stuff, lots of really helpful stuff. Definitely worth the scrolling past us once or twice a day to see that stuff. Chris is mostly in charge of it, so I just scroll through and I get to also benefit. I'm like the rest of you. We are all plebeians compared to Carissa. I heard that that's
Yes.
not how you pronounce plebeian,
I was
but I
gonna
don't
say,
know.
is it plebeian?
Is it plebeian? I don't know. Does
I don't
anyone else
know.
know out there? I'm a plebeian, so I wouldn't know. So if
Yeah,
anyone else
exactly.
knows, it would be great. If you guys want,
Pronunciation.
exactly. If you guys want to support the pod, you guys can do that. You guys can go to storysirenstudio.com or the scripturientsociety.com. It'll take you to the same place. We have some really cool merch there that's for sale. That's just if you're a writer, a reader, whatever, go check it out. You can also learn more about Chris and I, the wonderful people that we are, and our history and how the pod got started. So I think that's everything I've got for you guys. So until next week, keep writing.
And we'll see you on the next page.